Okay. All right, ji, Assalamu alaikum. I'd just like to welcome everyone on this first session of what we are going to call the GPI talk. हम बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री में से हैं और we thought about what are the things that we can actually talk about and discuss amongst ourselves, and bring our thoughts out to the community, to the banking community, and to others as well, and pick topics that are of relevance today and maybe have been for a while as well. My name is Salman Sarwar, and I'm an ex-banker. I have been with the banking industry for 20 years, especially in the retail banking space. And I am now consulting. I've been consulting for the last, I would say, more than 10 years with the banking industry. मेरे साथ मेरे honored guest हैं, but not just a guest. Faisal will be a very integral part of the GPI talk panel. And Faisal Anwar has 30 years plus of experience and has held many senior roles in the banking industry. Bank of America, ABN AMRO, and RBS, HBL, and then in Turkey as well with ETDB, and has held top positions such as Chief Operating Officer and Global Compliance Officer as well. And his expertise, I know his expertise goes across because I've worked with Faisal for many years, but risk compliance, risk management, AML, CFT, anti-bribery, corruption, governance, code of conduct, third-party risk management, and ESG. So हमारा जो topic है आज का वो ESG है. But before we get on to the topic, welcome Faisal. And so good to do these, start these sessions with you. It is indeed my pleasure. But I'd like you to first maybe introduce yourself to the audience, and then we can get on with the topic.
Okay, thank you very much, Salman, for your kind and very comprehensive introduction. I don't think I can add much to it, except that, I also consider myself a learner. Even at this stage in my life, when, Alhamdulillah, I've got quite a bit of banking experience under the belt. And after I left my corporate career, I also, like you, launched a consultancy and training and development setup as well. So as an independent consultant and as a trainer, I work with different institutions like Green Peak International and some others. And that basically gives me the benefit of, looking at not only the banking industry, but certain other sectors of our economy too. I mean, anybody who is interested in compliance and risk management, operations excellence, and increasingly ESG. So I think maybe we can contribute to their objectives and lend a helping hand. So thanks a lot, Salman. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here on this series of GPI talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. It's an honor to be here with you just as well. तो ये हम I remember asking you जी किस चीज से शुरू करें, and lo and behold you came up with a unique subject, and I expected nothing other than that. So Faisal, आपने कहा कि हम ESG से क्यों नहीं शुरू करते? So for the benefit of the audience and everyone else, ये ESG क्या बला है, Faisal?
Yeah. Yes, Salman. ESG जो है I would say that it is not a brand new concept. It has been in use, I would say, for at least a couple of decades. It is only now that it has started receiving, more publicity, and it is being underscored the world over across various industries. And I think one of the drivers that led to the let's say interest in ESG, and not only interest but the need to adopt a framework such as ESG was the climate risk, or maybe we can also call it broadly the environment risk. As we all know that the world, it is facing the threat, an existential threat, in the sense that the global warming is expected to go to something like 2 or 3% compared to the pre-industrial levels if we don't do something about it. So many of us would remember that there have been certain conferences uh, held annually under the auspices of the UN, and under the leadership of certain countries which are actually concerned about the environmental risks, and particularly the climate risks. And Pakistan itself, by the way, as you know, it is amongst the top 10 countries which are under the threat of climate risk. Uh, there are issues with regard to the availability of water. Water scarcity is going to be a problem for Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and so that's one of the issues. And you know that the climate inaction has led to many natural disasters as well. I mean, you see torrential rains, for example, in this part of the world, as well as in certain other countries or continents as well. So these, let's say, natural phenomenon, or disasters, I would say, have been unprecedented. So if the world does not do something about if it does not take the remedial measures, we are going to be in for a lot of trouble. So the targets which I would say almost 200 countries they have agreed to um, are related to the reduction of carbon emissions, and the overall target is to reach a net zero emissions level by about 2050. Okay, and the target is also to reduce the global warming to uh, to a maximum of 1.5 degree centigrade over and above the pre-industrial level. So that must have been one of the drivers. Um, Apart from that, I would also like to maybe refer uh, back to uh, the concepts of capitalism, particularly the shareholder capitalism. About 50 years ago or so, a very famous economist, Milton Friedman, he came up with an essay, I think in 1970. And in that, he talked about the responsibility of a company. And he said very, very clearly and very bluntly that the companies, their sole mission should be the earning of profits, and that's about it. And they should be able to make as much money, generate as much profits as they can, uh, within the rules of the game and without any fraud and deceit. I mean, that's what he had said. But at that point of time, the companies, I mean, all over the world, they were actually considered to be very, I would say, profit oriented, and they would not think beyond the interest of the shareholders. But over a period of time, things started changing due to, I would say, internal as well as external influences and pressures. There was more awareness about, let's say, for example, the human rights and the civic, bodies and the activists. They actually started asking the companies to play their role in contributing something positive to the society as well, to
Right.
which Milton Friedman had not agreed to. So it was back in 2019 that in a roundtable, in a business roundtable, which was held in the US in August 2019. And that roundtable, business roundtable, was chaired by Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan. And they started discussing about the purpose of the companies. I mean, of course, that would include not only banks but companies from all the sectors.
G.
And they felt that there was a need to take a broader approach with regard to capitalism. So, beyond the shareholder capitalism, they actually came up with this term stakeholder capitalism, and which meant that it was not only for the shareholders' interest that a company should work. It should not only be for the profits, but it should also be for the other stakeholders, for example, employees, customers, suppliers, vendors, and the communities in which the companies operate in. So that's how the idea of stakeholder capitalism was promoted. I mean, it was there, but it had not reached a wide acceptability. So the wider acceptability was reached in that business roundtable. And then, as I said earlier, that there were certain imperatives that arose due to the environmental and climate risks. But not only that, there were areas that needed, uh, you know, that needed to be addressed by the companies in the spheres of the society, and governance basically was the glue that kept all these elements together. So that, in a nutshell, is what ESG is all about. So I'll pause right there.
Okay. Um, so, I was taking down some notes and just thinking about Faisal, that there are some things that obviously are in control of people managing big businesses all the way to small businesses, and I guess when it comes to things like governance and social responsibility, they apply to big as well as small businesses. So I mean, obviously the impact probably is, I guess, to an extent, much larger when all large businesses, especially on the environment, but also with respect to social and governance. But it can be equally large when it comes to small businesses applying these ethics in their business. For example, if a small business owner thinks about ESG and says, "Okay, what can I do to ensure that not only am I just doing business to make a profit, but also I am providing services or products to people that benefit them, be it tangible products, be it food or anything." If every small business person starts thinking in this way, तो वो भी impact जो है वो it can be a society evolving impact, if I may.
That's right.
Um, but so I just wanted to make that point that it's not just large businesses, but it's also maybe part of when there'll be people who'll be hearing this, maybe owning small, medium-sized businesses. They may think, well, this applies to the big guys, not to me. but actually it applies to everyone. This concept applies to everyone, if I may. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that I mean we'll be talking about some of the local guidelines which have been issued
Ji.
by our regulators, but even otherwise, if you keep this formal framework of ESG, I mean, aside, there are areas in which the small and medium enterprises, as well as micro enterprises, micro businesses, uh, they can and they should contribute. For example, I mean, you talked about ethics in their business. So um, basically, we do have a code of business ethics for the small and medium enterprises in Pakistan, by the way. So that is something that has already been worked upon. But the gap is between the letter and the spirit. I mean,
But
basically that is the issue. And when we talk about ESG, of course, I mean even a medium or a small business, it can also contribute. For example, in terms of environment, there could be two or three types of initiatives which can be taken by the companies, whether they're large, medium, or small. And one of the areas, or one of the let's say uh, spheres, is their own internal sphere. Basically the
Ji.
company itself, it can undertake uh, measures, for example, to introduce a paperless environment.
Ji.
Okay, so that obviously has an impact on the environment, in terms of ensuring that the trees are not cut to the extent that deforestation actually takes place. So that's an impact. Then, secondly, responsible consumption uh, of, let's say, water, responsible consumption of electricity,
Yes.
using, let's say, devices which do not cause or cause less pollution in the
Bilkul.
enterprises. Small things like, for instance, you might have experienced in certain countries, unfortunately not in Pakistan that much, that there are sensors installed in buildings, so that when you enter a building or when you enter into your house or apartment,
Ji.
uh, there are switches which actually sense the presence of the occupants in that room or in that building, and the light goes on and off based on whether somebody is present in that room or not. So these are small things,
Yes.
uh, that can be
बिल्कुल
done.
बिल्कुल अच्छा फैसल मैं आना चाह रहा हूँ अब I want to come down to we talked about the concept itself and how it evolved globally. I now want to come to you know because the audience and our audience would be from Pakistan and nearabouts, but what do you think? What is the work that's been done locally with respect to regulation? I know that SECP has put something together, and so has the State Bank. So maybe your thoughts around what is the regulation around this. Once we talk about that, then we'll move on to okay, what is how has the regulation been implemented? आपने letter of spirit की बात की, but we'll go there a little later and talk about. But if you can throw some light around what does the regulation say and what do the various regulators here say about it?
Yeah, firstly, let me talk about the let's say the roadmap provided by SECP, and even before that roadmap with regard to ESG was provided by SECP for public consultation. Uh, they had issued some CSR guidelines, and I'll talk to you in a minute about the difference between CSR and ESG.
G.
There may be a bit of overlap
Mm.
between CSR and ESG, but they are basically, I would say, they are governed in a different manner, and the purposes, uh, while they can overlap, they could also be different. So,
Yes.
CSR guidelines, they were formally issued by the SECP back in 2013, and they were to be adopted only on a voluntary basis. They were not mandatory.
Mm.
Okay. It was basically last year uh, that the ESG guidelines were issued by SECP, and they not guidelines, but as I said earlier, that it is a discussion paper or a sort of a roadmap. So they have given timelines for the various milestones that will be achieved under this roadmap. For example, the first milestone will be the sensitization of the industry, the companies to the idea, to the concept of ESG, and for basically promoting or making this idea understandable, they have mapped the ESG factors or elements with the Sustainable Development Goals. So I would just take a minute. I'll put up my only slide that I have today because it's not a master class. It is just
Please.
talk about the concept. So uh,
Are you able to put that up?
let me see if I can. Okay. Okay. So let me see if I can get it. Okay, I've got it.
Acha, I'm just wondering because I can't see it.
Okay.
Maybe our help uh, Miss, can help us out with it, Mr. Hassan Tariq. There you go.
Yeah.
We've got yes.
Okay. So basically, I'll enlarge it. So I hope that everyone can see this slide. So
Yes.
these are the Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs, uh, which actually are the successors for the Millennium Development Goals. I think most of us have heard about the Millennium Development Goals as well, which were launched by the United Nations some time back. So these Sustainable Development Goals took the place of those MDGs or Millennium Development Goals, and they were launched back in 2015. And the deadline for the completion of these goals is 2030. So if you look, I hope that you can read the text which has been given in these boxes.
Are these in order of importance,
No, they are
Faisal?
not. They are not in order of importance. That's just a random order.
T.
Number one is no poverty, so that is not in any order of priority. I mean, one can say that depending upon the sector that will be worked on, uh, globally by the countries and I would say by the private sector as well as the public sector.
G.
These are some of the goals that they may want to take a look at, and they may adopt some of these goals and internalize them as part of their, in the case of countries, they could come up with their own national action plans or strategies, and the companies in the public sector as well as the private sector, they can also pick and choose as to what goals they think that they can work on and make a significant contribution to, because you can't do everything under the sun. You have to pick and choose very carefully. So I mean, very quickly, you see that there is an SDG number one, which is to eliminate poverty all over the world. Then also number two is zero hunger, basically eliminate hunger, then good health and well-being. Then SDG number four is to provide quality education. Five is about gender equality, and then so on. Clean water and sanitation, clean energy, and things like that. Decent work and economic growth. Then industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So that is where things like digitization would also come in. Then reducing inequalities. Now, inequalities normally what we take to be inequality is only the gender inequality, but there could be other inequalities
Of
as well.
course.
For example, there could be inequalities vis-a-vis ethnicity. There could be inequalities vis-a-vis, let's say, the way of thinking even.
Very cool.
You see, so you need to ensure diversity in everything. So gender equality, particularly or specifically, has been you know
Highlighted.
mentioned as goal number five. Okay,
Ah,
so climate action is number 13. Then, I mean, associated with climate action is the life on the land, life below water, and so on. And if you look at number 16, that is about peace, justice, and strong institutions. So, for example, when we say strong institutions, that is not only the government institution, but I would say these are the corporate institutions as well.
yes.
So that is where things like fairness, transparency, and ethics, I mean, they would actually fall in. And then last but not the least is partnerships for the goals. I mean, again, we talk about the public-private partnership as well as collaboration. I mean, even government collaboration as well, sharing of data, sharing of these goals, working in unison for the achievement of these goals. And now, under these goals, there are different targets. I mean, there could be 8, 9, or 10 targets, which basically are the specific sub goals which have to be achieved. So I have shown this slide because the SECP roadmap, I mean, that also talks about the sustainable development goals in the sense that they have tried to map ESG with the sustainable development goals. And even if you read some other literature, for example, if you read the ESG reports that have been issued in various countries, including in Pakistan, they also refer back again and again to the sustainable development goals.
Goals.
Okay, so that is why I thought that it was important to keep in mind these goals. Okay, now this is, as I said earlier, uh, SECP had issued a CSR guidelines, and I said that I will try to distinguish between CSR and ESG as well. Now, CSR or corporate social responsibility, as most of us know,
Mhm.
is actually considered to be a philanthropic activity mostly. And some, I would say, critics would say that even that involves self interest of a company. And they think that it is merely a public relations, a PR kind of exercise. Okay. And what happens mostly is like in the US, they allocate, let's say, 1% of the profits, for example, to the CSR types of activities. But ESG, as I said earlier, it can overlap with some of the CSR, goals, and they could be additional. They could be
Yes.
in addition to the CSR goals. And the idea of ESG is that you actually offer products and services which actually address the ESG imperatives.
Yes.
And you also make them a part of your business plans, a part of your strategy, and part of then obviously your tactical and operational plans. So that's the idea. So
Yes.
yeah,
Faisal, in fact, they're very interesting because the moment you mentioned CSR and ESG, and I remember having spoken to you about this earlier as well,
you're right.
um, or it was very, I was quite intrigued. we can actually, as a company can continue to, for example, for the lack of better wording, continue to not follow any of these 17 SDGs and still do CSR. एक बजट साइड पे रख के वो मे बी एक किसी कॉज को they can support, but that doesn't mean that they will necessarily be focusing on any of these, on poverty or zero hunger or clean water or or any of these other elements. These are actually intertwined with the way a company develops itself, and its values,
Exactly.
and eventually converting into its KPIs. That these need to be part of deliverable KPIs of the business. And आपने बड़ा अच्छा mention किया कि we talked about capitalism. And capitalism is not bad, but greedy
Yeah,
capitalism is what stumps any society, if I may. और जाहिर है फिर उसमें ये होता है कि in in this desire to make more and more money, you start compromising on what is good for society. And it starts with an inch and then goes to a foot and then to a mile, and then it kind of envelops unless you are conscious of what it does to you. So
absolutely.
yes, so ये चीजें तो फिर these are just as much part of how an organization puts its plans together, because हम
That's right.
business के roll out plans बनाते हैं, controls के बनाते हैं, from a banking perspective, if I may, risk management के बनाते हैं, organizational structures के बनाते हैं, मगर ये चीजें जो हैं ये हम as such intertwined plans में भी उस तरह से नहीं बनाते, या बज़ाहिर हमें we're not able to see them because they aren't part of the KPIs of every senior management, meaningful KPIs, and then going down the organizational structure. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah, I think you're right, and you use the right word that they have to be intertwined, sort of goals. I would just like to add here one thing.
Ji.
You see, the misconception is that the ESG activities, they don't bring in any profits. Okay, profit, I would say, is still the I would say most important or an equally important goal for any company. That's the reason for existence of any company. They have to be profitable, and the basically the concept that if you try to divert your resources to the sustainable development goals, which are tied with the ESG imperatives as well, your profits will actually go down. That's not correct. In fact, the quite the contrary is true. For example, okay, if you look at some of the social goals in the S part of ESG, okay, uh, obviously the social goals would, for example, pertain to the well-being of its employees. It would pertain to basically fair pay, fair compensation to your employees.
Yes.
So what would happen when you pay fairly or you compensate fairly your employees, and if you take care of the well-being of employees, and health and safety is also part of that, what will happen is that the productivity of the employees will increase. You'll have satisfied employees, and we know that if you have satisfied employees, you'll have satisfied customers. If you
बिल्कुल.
have satisfied customers, you will generate repeat business. So, I mean, eventually, it is going to lead to higher profitability. Let me also give you maybe examples of environment, the E part of ESG. uh, the environmental imperatives will also lead to the efficient utilization of the physical resources of the company. Okay, for example, I talked about the paperless environment, for example, and in banks, for example, it is the solar powered ATMs. LED lights in bank buildings,
Hmm.
things like that. Now, these would basically lead to operational efficiencies. And yes, operational efficiencies, they have an impact on the bottom line of any company, including the banks. Uh, Similarly, I mean, governance. Now, that is also not something new. I mean, basically, the idea of governance is to basically run a tight ship. You should have the controls, you should have the policies, procedures, committees, so on and so forth, policies to run your business, okay, in a prudent manner. Okay, so what does that do? For example, internal controls, they're part of governance. So internal controls will lead to a lower incidence of frauds. uh, then also anti-corruption, of course, that
Yes.
will also lead to, I would say, uh, better utilization of your resources, and you'll be doing business ethically. Okay.
Absolutely.
um, One of the things, and there have been quite a few studies on this, that the ethically or responsibly run companies, their performance over a period of time is better than the companies who are not run in an ethical manner or in a less ethical manner. So that's actually proven. Then the third thing I would like to say is to look at it from a triple bottom line angle as well.
Hmm.
Some institutions, they have taken a PPPP, four P's approach. um, for example, I would say some of the banks in Canada. I mean, even a bank in Bangladesh. You might have heard of BRAC Bank. So they've got this three or four P approach. Now, what are those three or four P's? That is people, planet, prosperity, and principles of governance. So, I mean, if you look at these sustainable development goals, or even if you look at ESG, they are basically in one way or the other impinging upon either your people,
Yes.
okay, your employees, or it could be the people in your community in which the company operates in. Then, of course, we talked about the planet, the challenges that we have in terms of the climate changes that are taking place. So, I mean, if you have a planet which is safer, where the environment is conducive to
Hmm.
your existence,
Hmm.
then it means that your existence as a company, your existence as an individual, that will also be favorably impacted upon. And then
Absolutely.
prosperity, also. I mean, you pay well to your people. You take care of their training and development needs, for example, their capacity building. So these all have a positive impacts. And as I said earlier, that governance is the thread that runs across all
Across. Absolutely. And I think, these things lined up as structurally as KPIs, as objectives that need to be achieved, along with those other things, eventually, drive for um, more sustainable business, more repeat business, happier customers, and therefore more profitability. So, I mean, it goes hand in glove with a happy business, happy employees, happy community, happy society that you exist in, because everyone's benefiting from it in various ways, not just in terms of the bottom line or return on equity or return on investment that is going to an investor who's putting the money in. So, absolutely, this has such a big impact, Faisal.
Yeah.
Um, Acha Faisal, there is an interesting question. If we're done with the slide, we can actually move on to this. Um, by I think Hassan will
Yeah.
put up the question, and I'd like you to have a go at it. Sayyida Sana Khalid asks, What can I do as a citizen for development to be more sustainable?
Well, as a citizen, I mean, we can also, I mean, undertake various measures. For example, I talked about the uh, conservation of resources. So, as a citizen in your home, what you can do is ensure that electricity is not wasted, water is not wasted, uh, and then also you can recycle some of the items. As you know, that there is a huge potential of recycling of various items, whether they're made of plastics or paper or
Exactly.
other materials. So these are some of the very, I would say, doable things that come to my mind.
In fact,
And
I just
when you
like, sorry,
yeah,
sorry, please go ahead,
when you,
Faisal.
when you talk about development, then in your own sphere as a citizen, I mean, we have talked about reduction of poverty, we have talked about gender equality, and we also talked about quality of education. So, in your own community, as a citizen of that, let's say, community, as a part of that community, you can also be instrumental in promoting the avenues of education for underprivileged children, for example. I mean, there are many institutions, including schools, in various cities of Pakistan that are working towards it. So you can, as a citizen, be part of such an institution. So you don't have to just give a financial donation. You know, there are other ways. You can be a part-time, let's say, teacher, depending upon your time. You can volunteer for, let's say, going to a school for the underprivileged and teaching a subject or two. So these are some of the examples that come to my mind immediately.
I think excellent, Faisal. These are excellent examples and some guidelines. Whilst you were speaking, what came to mind was, turning off the lights at home when you're not using them. Um, I remember, there was um, water conservation. There was again one of these companies that talked about how you can actually have distilled water from air conditioners. वो सारा leak हो जाता है, so you can actually put a bucket and use that water. We use air conditioners all day in companies as well as at home. And then obviously it's not just about giving money,
Yeah.
it's where you can give your time and contribute to society around you. Wherever you see you can, and where there are inadequacies. और हमारी सोसाइटी में तो बहुत सारी इस तरह की चीजें हैं जो हमें आसपास नजर आ जाती हैं अपने
Yeah.
घर में. आप घर जो काम कर रहा है उसी को बैठ के पढ़ा दें थोड़ा सा.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. I mean, just
uh, that's so many
volunteer
different.
plantation, for example, plantation tree plantation campaigns. You can do it in your own
Absolutely,
house, in your own,
absolutely.
let's say, housing society. So,
Yes.
so you can do that. You can mobilize, I mean, other people to do as well.
Yes. Very. We've got another question, Faisal, from Ali Amar. Are there any pledges, timelines? And this brings us to the next part of our topic. But let's take this question and then go there. Are there any pledges, timelines made by financial institutions and non-financial institution firms in Pakistan on SDG? Faisal, any views on that?
Um, you see, as a country, Pakistan has made a pledge. They are a signatory to the SDG goals. And now those goals, obviously have to be and are being cascaded to FIs, non-FIs as well. I am personally not aware of any company, FI or non-FI, which has made a pledge on SDG goals. Having said that, as I said earlier, that there are ESG goals that have been, some of them have been picked up by some of the financial institutions and non-financial institutions as well. And as I said earlier, that ESG goals, they could be a subset of SDG goals, most of them. So by undertaking some ESG measures or meeting some of those requirements, you are actually committing to the SDG goals as well. And as I said earlier, that SECP itself has tried to map the ESG goals with the SDG goals. And you will very soon, I think, over the next 1 year or 1 year and a half, I mean, according to the roadmap of SECP, you will be receiving more guidelines. I think once the public dissemination of the ESG roadmap has been completed, the and the public consultation has been completed. So based on those comments, then SECP will start framing the guidelines. It will come up with some ESG dashboards. I think in less than a year, hopefully, they will come up with an ESG dashboard. Then they will, in I think September 2023, by the third quarter of 2023, SECP will be coming up with more detailed ESG guidelines as well as the disclosure requirement. Now, that's also important, on which I'll talk later on. Then SECP has plans to basically promote the ESG related mutual funds, and will also come up with an ESG mutual funds index. So
Okay.
these are some of the things that the FIs as well as non-FIs they will be adopting. Then you talked about specifically about financial institutions. So let me say that State Bank of Pakistan has also come up with guidelines. They mostly pertain to green banking, so they have an environmental impact. But having said that, they have also come up with the environment and social risk management guidelines as well.
Sorry.
Ji.
Yes, go ahead.
So I mean, again, all these are contributing towards the SDG goals.
Okay. Faisal, maybe we bring it down to, very rightly so, like you said, that these policy frameworks are being put in place, but obviously, how the policy framework is implemented and, um, you know, taken up by the various organizations will really show us the impact of that policy framework. Because and to an extent, sometimes I feel maybe it needs to be thrust upon us for us to be to be more compliant with these things. So it would obviously help in the society and economy improving. But let's just go there and talk about, where do you think are we could point towards and say, well, this organization, and I don't want to sort of highlight or anything like that, but let's do that, and just look at any particular industry which you want to talk about that has taken a step forward in this direction, or any particular organizations, entities that have really made a mark. And also at the same time, as part two would be, okay, where are we just trying to tick the boxes, and we think we're doing it, but we're not really there, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are two or three dimensions of your question, of your loaded question. So first, you said that these imperatives or requirements, so to speak, are being thrust upon us, or they will not be acted upon unless they are imposed or thrust upon us. So the way to thrust or impose such requirements is basically through the law, through the regulations. I mean, obviously, the culture in an organization, the attitude of an organization, and its board as well as the top management team, they also play a very important part if the effort is to be a sincere, a genuine kind of effort. But yes, we do need laws, we do need regulations, and I think most of us know that in the sphere of ESG, there are hosts of regulations. And laws. For example, in the case of environment, we have Environmental Protection Act of 1997. But when the devolution to the provinces took place via the 18th Amendment, the environmental protection has also become a provincial subject. Certain areas and certain activities, they remain a part of the federal Environmental Protection Act of Pakistan, but many of the activities, they have been devolved to the provinces. So likewise, I mean, if you look at the areas or the elements of social and governance, there are so many laws. For example, there is a Factories Act, which continues from the pre-partition days, but it has been amended a number of times to attune it with the changing dynamics. Then there is a law on child labor as well. Okay, and there is a Workers' Safety Act, and there are OSHA, Occupational Safety and Hazard Act, sort of requirements. You see such requirements globally and also in Pakistan. Then there is an act on the harassment of workers, especially women. And on the G side, as far as the corporate governance is concerned, we all know that SECP, as well as the State Bank of Pakistan, for banks, of course, for the regulated entities in their ambit, they have issued the Code of Corporate Governance requirements, which have to be followed. So this is the imposition part. But then it is also the culture part. I mean, you said that some of the organizations may be just ticking the boxes. Yes, I mean, unfortunately, they are doing that, and that obviously is not going to take us anywhere. And but having said that, there are also efforts being made to really validate the claims of the organizations, including banks, which claim which actually say that okay, they have done such and such things in the ESG sphere. You then asked me about whether in Pakistan are there any examples that we can talk about with regard to success of ESG, how it is being handled. Well, I think at this point of time, there aren't too many success stories, but there are indeed some stories that we can actually learn from. In the non-banking or non-financial sector, I think it is Nestle, which, of course, by virtue of its being a multinational company, they can leverage across their international network and learn from the other practices. And I think they've introduced some, or they've launched some of their practices in Pakistan too. For example, they have been instrumental in improving the quality of life of their farmers as well. When they would go to these farms to collect milk, they actually observed that these farmers were living in very squalid conditions, and even their livestock, they were also not being really looked after. They were living in very dirty conditions. So they then educated the farmers and basically heightened the awareness with regard to the cleanliness and ensuring the health of their livestock and their own health as well. So I think
Right.
that's a success story. I think in banking field we have seen now banks appointing ESG coordination officers, and I think there is some activity that has been seen. I've seen the ESG report of JS Bank, and I think it is quite an impressive report. Obviously, there is always more that can be done. HBL, I know they've got an ESG department as well.
Right.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not mistaken, they have also issued green bonds. Okay,
Okay.
so that's on the product and services side. So I think that's a contribution.
So I think that's those are some steps forward, if I may.
Yeah, yeah,
So there is hope. I think if organizations have taken a step forward, then the next step is to entrench things further. It takes time at times in large organizations to take it all the way down and ensure that there is tangible implementation, if I may, of what started with maybe putting an officer in place and putting a KPI in place or putting an objective
that's
and
right.
then
That's right.
Noreen is an old colleague of ours as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Hi,
And
Noreen.
hi, Noreen,
Yeah.
if she's still there. So um, she's asked how open would local, smaller. I think what she means to say is organizations be for essential trust and imposition from regulatory body or global organizations to do skill and knowledge training. Would they struggle with resources, budget, and necessary motivation to adopt sustainable business practices supporting SDG? I think the essence of what Noreen is asking is smaller organizations. They would need the budget to train their people, to bring them up the curve, etc. Would that be a roadblock to implementation, um, or would there be another way out, Faisal?
Well, I think she has raised a very valid question. And I think it's a valid concern as well. Obviously, small SME, small or a medium enterprise would always have the budgetary constraint, the resource constraints. So I think what can be done is that there are some organizations, in my opinion, like CERB, CERB, the Center of Excellence for Responsible Business. Okay, I think such institutions, uh, if I may, they should come up with providing support in terms of training and development, knowledge dissemination to these smaller companies or organizations. So that's one way of doing it. And then there are other organizations which have their outreach in Pakistan also. I think there is an organization called UN Global Compact, which probably has an office in Karachi too. So I think they can also be approached uh, for 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 the same purpose. Okay,
Okay.
and then obviously there are consultants available, but obviously if these smaller organizations are looking for pooled sort of resources, they can be found in organizations like CERB or the UN.
Any way, Faisal, that smaller organizations can approach this without thinking about budgetary constraints? Any activities that they can, low hanging fruits that you feel they can go towards, and start at least implementing this in letter and spirit. Um, the SDGs that we were talking about, SDGs. So is there anything there, any of the practices they could pick up from there and say, okay, this can be done without budget or without training a lot of people? um, Anything there you would like to recommend?
Surely, I would again sort of say that some of the low hanging fruit, so to speak, is already available there in the
Hmm.
area of environment. We talked about the conservation of electricity and so on and so forth. So that's one very simple, I would say, simplest way of contributing towards the ESG cause without spending even a penny. Okay,
Right.
that all that it needs is some discipline and a bit of I would say sensitization
Yes.
of the employees. Okay.
Yes.
Um, Secondly, in the area of social, I mean, again, a small company or a medium-sized company, they would also obviously have employees. So, I mean, take good care of them. I mean, what does it take? It's not always the monetary compensation. Okay, it's more than that. It's motivating them. I mean, you have to create a sense of belongingness in them. I mean, those were the things that we learned in ABN AMRO years back.
Right.
Okay, I mean, a simple pat on the back can also go a long way.
Right.
And yes, you can also, I mean, uh, ensure that there is diversity in the people you hire. For example, if there is a 15 to 20 member company,
Hmm.
a small company, so I mean, why don't you ensure gender diversity? Why don't you ensure ethnic diversity? Why don't you ensure diversity in the way of thinking,
Yes.
problem solving skills, even?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are so many other ways. Governance also, I mean, even a small company, as I said earlier, they can have a code of ethics,
Yes.
and it has been worked on in Pakistan. And if somebody is interested, I can even send you or I can send you the link for that code of ethics that can be adopted. That has been specifically designed for these small and medium-sized companies.
That's
So
good.
there are resources available.
There. A couple of comments, Faisal, and then we'll close. I just want your response to these comments, and we're a little above time already, but such an interesting topic, we could go on and on. Aisha Umar actually says, very knowledgeable speaker, and I completely concur, Aisha. There is much more knowledge than Faisal has just shared. He thinks very deeply about things that matter. And she says, please do something on women empowerment in the banking sector. Um, it makes me feel that there's work to be done, Faisal.
Well, I can say a lot about it. I mean, this is something which is very close to my heart. And
Yes.
sometimes I write, what shall I say, very incisive comments on LinkedIn about it as well.
Mm.
You see, what happens is that when we talk about gender diversity, it becomes a tick in the box exercise. For example, in the banking sector, I can see that. I've seen that. I still see that. Um, I mean, if you look at the management teams of some of the largest banks in Pakistan, 19, 20 member management teams, you hardly find one or two ladies,
Yes.
females as their members.
Yes.
Um, I mean, unfortunately, I really not sure if I can take the name of that bank, but let me say that a bank which was created primarily for the purpose of women empowerment. They have got a male CEO. I mean, what could be what could be more I would say ironic than that. So okay, we talk about diversity, but we don't talk about inclusion of different genders, men
Yes.
as well as transgenders. So
Yes.
so I mean, HR department, I mean, since they are the ones who are the first stop whenever any hiring or sourcing has to be made, I mean, they have to work with the different group heads and down the line as well to ensure that a healthy gender mix is actually maintained. What you see is that when the KPIs for gender diversity are shown, they only relate to, okay, the percentage of women, the female staff in let's say a certain bank.
Yeah.
But we need to have more granularity. I mean, inclusion would only take place when you have, let's say, indicators which show how many of these ladies, okay, are in the middle management. How many of these ladies are vice presidents? How many
Yes.
are part of the top management? Uh,
Yes.
okay, unless you have those measurable indices, I don't think so that you can really ensure women empowerment.
I
Uh,
agree. I agree. It has to go
yeah,
further down, trench
further
further.
down the line. And
Absolutely.
yes,
And the last comment, Faisal, is Ali Amar. He's with us, I guess, right from the beginning. So as senior management, I think both of us agree on it. Senior management and board members should be ultimate accountable to promote and allocate resources, budgets on ESG initiatives. There should be a formal public disclosure on performance in annual reports.
Yes, absolutely. And as I said, that SECP will be coming up with these disclosure requirements in about maybe a year and a half or so. And obviously, the state bank will also have these disclosure requirements for
Right.
banks and other entities that are in the ambit of a state bank. One thing that we need to be very careful about disclosure is, and that's an issue also in ESG, is that the let's say the metrics or the indicators, they are not consistent and they are not comparable. Okay, everybody has been coming up with their own indicators or with their own metrics, but the good news is that a lot of work is being done and has been done on coming up with the disclosure requirements as well as the indicators for ESG.
Yes. Yes.
There is what's called the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, and that's not the ISSB that we have in Pakistan. Okay, for the recruitment of army people, it is International Sustainability Standards Board, which was actually formed just last year. The IFRS Foundation, you know, basically launched it last year. So they have done a lot of work. The World Economic Forum, WEF, they follow GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative standards. Okay, for the measurement of the success in each of the indicators for ESG. So I think the disclosure will be much better and it will be comparable as well once we have some understanding and some convergence of these indicators and metrics. The other thing that we have to keep in mind uh, is the concept that is called greenwashing. Greenwashing is basically uh, when a company would basically try to deceive the market, deceive their clients and other stakeholders. They would exaggerate their claims. And mind you, I mean, in certain countries, stern action has been taken against such claims. For example, Deutsche Bank recently, I think as recent as in May 2022, I mean this year, their asset management group, it was raided by the police at their Frankfurt offices. And what were the charges? That they had tried to mislead the investors by giving some false claims. Then even a company like Goldman Sachs. Okay, Goldman Sachs is being investigated into by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is the counterpart of our SECCP, on similar false claims. So one has to be careful. I mean, you talked about the tick in the box exercise. That should be, I mean, avoided. There could be very stiff fines and penalties. I mean, and then yes, they also gave rise to the reputational risk. And then, as you know, that the reputational risk can and does translate into the financial risk, and it affects your bottom line. So these are
Absolutely.
that we need
Absolutely.
to take care of.
Faisal, that Ali fully agrees. Faisal, thank you so much for all that knowledge sharing, and it was an enlightening session for
Yeah.
me as well.
I would
Uh,
just like to, if you would allow me, Salman, I would just like
G,
to
G,
conclude with one
G,
very
please.
brief slide. These are just polling questions. I don't know how many participants do we have, but
Oh,
but at least this would be something that they can actually take back to their organizations and do some introspection. These are simple questions,
sure, please.
and you know, one can take a look at them. Okay. Okay, can't get it.
Maybe Hassan can help with
Hassan,
this.
could you bring that slide on the polling question, if possible?
Hassan, can you bring the slide on the polling question? Let me just see. Let me see if he's trying.
Okay.
Does he have it? Do you have it?
He has it?
Let me just check with him, Faisal. Just give me a minute. Faisal, there is some issue in putting up the slides. He's not being able to get it on.
Okay.
Maybe what we can do is when we send the clip out, we'll
Right.
send the slide with it as well.
Okay, sure. No problem there.
But I know that slide will really help participants or people who are watching and others who will see this later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah,
Ah,
okay.
there it is. There it is.
Okay, so I mean, if you can respond, fine. If you can't, that's okay. You can take it back to your organizations and see where you are in terms of your progress towards ESG. Now, ESG obviously is a long journey. I mean, you can't say that you're going to implement it and you haven't implemented it in just a few months or weeks. Obviously, it's a long journey, but you have to start from somewhere. And I mean, the starting point obviously is to form some sort of a core group or a core committee, and then come up with a policy, have it approved by the board, and then create a structure around it, and then you set the ball rolling in terms of the products and services that can be brought up, which support the objectives of ESG, particularly the environment part of it. And then you have to see where are the gaps. Do you need more awareness and training of the ESG concepts? Or maybe you are at a stage, or maybe you are at a level when there is neither any interest nor any effort uh, made for understanding the ESG concepts. So you can be either of these stages. One thing that I want to mention here is that the appointment of an ESG head does not mean that he or she is the person, the only person who is responsible for the ESG initiatives. No, I mean, certainly not. I mean, for example, if it is an environmental initiative to cut down some of the wastage of paper, then it has to be signed up by all the departments, including the procurement department. Okay, and similarly, when it comes to the employee, let's say, issues, and that it is in the interest of the entire organization, not just the HR head, to attract the best talent. Okay, and also to ensure that their developmental needs are addressed and that they are paid fairly, and health and safety is ensured, and so on and so forth. So please keep this thing in mind, that it is obviously everybody's responsibility. It has to be in the DNA of the organization.
Absolutely, Faisal. I mean, this slide um, is a one pager for all organizations. To be honest.
Yes.
um, Thank you so much, Faisal, for
Most welcome.
for this wonderful topic that you have shed so much light on. Um, Ali is saying this is a hot topic globally, and he wants to encourage GPI for more sessions in future. Ali,
Yes, absolutely.
we will absolutely talk more about this. ESG is intertwined in should be intertwined in business practices. That's how business should be done, to be honest. And if that was how it would be done, in most cases, the world, the environment would obviously be a better place. But the idea is that as as good corporates, as good citizens, we continue to make our effort to improve the way we live. So, therefore, ESG plays such a critical role. Um, with that, I would like to thank all our guests, all our viewers, and well, Faisal is not a guest because Faisal and myself will be doing these talks every week, inshallah. We'll pick up a relevant topic, hopefully relevant to the society, the industry. And various industries. But since we're bankers, we'll probably focus first on that industry and then see what we can look at branching out from there. But this is a series of talks that we felt is important. We need to bring, we talk about these things in our drawing rooms, ideas maybe in our corporate offices. But I think it's important that we build a forum where we can talk about this to the larger audience. It will only help. Thank you so much, Faisal. And with that, I guess we'll stop this session.
Okay.
And thank you, audience, as well.
Thanks a lot for having me, Salman. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed this session very much. I hope our participants also were able to get some insights. It's a vast topic.
Absolutely.
It can take a full day.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very
much, Salman. Thank you very much, Hassan Tariq, as well.
Thank you, Hassan.
GPI.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.